This is like the same argument that like Elon Musk's like nut huggers made. Bro said to Steve Jobs, "Hey, those balls look heavy. Do you need me to hold them for you?"
Give it to him.
That is a bitchy diva hoe if I've ever seen one.
He died the fruitiest death possible.
Let's look at your package, Cosmic.
It's you're being fucking stupid.
He gave that kid a hamburger.
Just because I like knobs. I like feeling knobs.
Same.
It can be pretty fun.
I can't say I feel the same.
You don't like feeling knobs, Jaxler? Why not?
I'm pretty anti-knob. I'm famously pretty anti-knob. I mean...
What about slob?
That obvious... Like... The bar was on the floor, and now we're going into hell.
What about slobbing on a knob, like corn on the cob? That was my cosmic joke of the day, everyone. Hope you enjoyed.
That was very cosmic.
I don't even feel like validating that.
That's not a cosmic joke, dude.
I just...
Any joke?
Why don't you go slob on some bitches? I don't know.
That's the
Nestani's
Jaxler joke.
like definition of a cosmic joke has like devolved from like pun to just things that are unfunny.
Yeah, it's just basically a cosmic joke is a joke that
much.
sucks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Welcome back to the podcast,
Wait, he's finally
everyone.
caught on that.
Welcome back, where we make fun of Cosmic's joking abilities. My name is Nestani.
I am Jaxler.
I'm cosmic, I guess.
And I'm Coley.
Yippee! All right, ladies.
Even wanna talk.
We have a special episode on our hands because it is episode 9. Now, you all don't spoil us, but for the audience at home, what do you think we're going to talk about on episode 9? Even though it might be in the title, but hopefully not. I don't know. The second hint, if you haven't got it yet, is 9:41 a.m. The third hint.
Talk about how
The third hint is a pirate ship. And if you still haven't got it, the fourth hint is the glasses symbol on the Safari browser that says like add to reading list. And those glasses belong to none other than Steve Jobs. It's a tribute to Steve Jobs. The pirate ship is the pirate flag that they waved above Steve Jobs' division or whatever the fuck. I don't know the whole story on that one.
I remember that.
And then 9:41 a.m. is the time that they use on every single like Apple keynote. Like if you ever look at the iPhone launch videos, it's always 9:41 on the screen, because the original time that they unveiled the iPhone for the first time was at 9:41 a.m. And it's episode 9. So there's your trailhead. We're going to be talking about Steve Jobs.
Yeah. But before
we're
that,
only a minute into this episode, and that was the most amount of psychic damage I have received on this entire journey that we've been on as the four of us.
You're
anyway, Cosmic, go ahead.
Hey,
I was going to say, before we get into that,
I can't let Cosmic have all the fun Easter eggs. So I had to dig up some Easter eggs that some of them I already knew. I had to look up the reading glasses.
I did not know that you knew about the pirate ship. I thought I was going to be the one to have to like drop something like that.
No, because it's funny to me because I watched an MKBHD. I watched a studio video, which is a subsection video of MKBHD where they break down Apple's shot on iPhone event that they did, which is
Let me break it down for you.
super cool. But they like pointed out the pirate ship, and then I was like, oh, what's the blah 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 blah. So I actually just found that out today accidentally, which was cool. And it's ironic because Apple is famously the most anti-pirating company of all time now, and it's really funny that they pay tribute to a pirate flag when they clearly don't want you doing that on their devices. Anyway,
I can tell you why they use the pirate ship, but before we get into that, it's Tuesday that we're recording this, and I put my 2 weeks in at my job.
Woo!
Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
Yippee!
Yeah.
Now you can use the... Now you can use the pay raise to buy an iPhone.
I feel like I expected you all to be a little more happy for me.
well, we already knew, but see, the thing is
We already
that
were the other day.
well,
Like,
that's
you're
true.
double dipping at this point, bro.
the audience doesn't know why you are excited about this, right? We know, but they don't know.
That's
so
fair.
maybe you should
Yeah,
explain
so
why
let's
this
jump.
is significant.
I mean,
or I can
have
in
to
2
think about-
sentences if you want me to.
I have to
You're
think
working
about
for
if
Steve
this is the
Jobs?
smart thing to do.
I'll summarize this.
If my lawyers
Cosmic
have cleared me
was
for
at
this.
SGDQ and he got a call that was about him basically moving to a different place in his job. Now he's at
Yup.
the good place at his job, right? Like if there's like building
I
A,
was,
B, C,
yeah.
and D, he's at building A. A is for like good people. It's where all the good people are. B, C, and D are for full of fucking shitters that are annoying as fuck. And then he got
I don't know
moved to
about
one
all
of these B, C, or D division. He got moved to like building C, which is full of a bunch of shitters that are annoying and micromanage you, right? When he's good at his job, and he's moved there because he's good, but it feels like he's getting punished. So he's like, "Fuck you, niggas! I'm gonna find a new job." So he finds a new job that
I don't
gives
think
him
he said it
more
like that.
money
I didn't say it like that.
it gives him more money for basically the same thing that he's already doing. So it's really just a dub that he was looking
Yeah, it is
around,
just a
and
dub.
now he's getting
Yeah,
more
I
money,
mean-
and he doesn't have to deal with all these fuckheads, even though he doesn't know if the people that he's going into are fuckheads. But at least if they're fuckheads, he's getting paid more money to deal
Well,
with
I
fuckheads.
mean, the thing is, right, is so to kind of talk around this.
And he
the
also said the
specifics
N-word
here.
that many times.
So,
Whoa.
so to talk around the specifics of this, it's very strange to me, not only when bosses get in contact with people on their vacation, but also when bosses do not understand, or like upper management does not understand that in order to keep your talent, you have to appease your talent, not make your talent do things that feel like punishment, even when you compensate them for said moves that are happening, you know, whether that move is them physically moving to a different location or into a new position, or if their infrastructure changes, something like that. So it's very strange to me when that sort of thing happens. And I mean, personally for me, I'm kind of somebody that has always taken those things on the chin. I was with the same company. I was with Walgreens for like 13 years. And a whole lot of my time in my 20s was spent waiting for things to get better, or waiting for, you know, what I deserved to kind of come my way. And instead of waiting for that to happen now, I'm just making it happen. I'm obviously not where I want to be quite yet. I wouldn't even say that I'm in the field that I want to be in, but whatever happens next is a decision that I made for myself instead of one that was made for me. So that's kind of where I'm at, and that's why I'm excited that's why I was excited to
Rising
start on
grind,
the last
baby.
leg. Yeah,
Use
I mean, I don't
people to get ahead.
That is my motto.
I don't know about all
That's what
that.
I do every day, all
What?
the time.
Loads
So,
of cash.
Yes.
Moving on to Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
But apathy is
Where
death.
do we want to begin?
Best quote.
Just,
You're the
Nestani,
one
do
that's
you want to
at the
kind of
beginning.
start this off, because I might be monologuing for
Do
a
I
bit.
want to start it off? I don't know where I don't even know where you're taking this. All I know is that you have a
Nice
lot of
try. I'll
animosity
start it
towards
off.
Steve Jobs.
Can I start it off?
Sure.
Do people have
You
things
started
that
off,
they
Cole.
want to start with? Yeah, go for it, Cole.
All right,
Yeah,
so
do you have
here's the thing.
questions you want to field.
I
Jax
think
owns an
Steve
iPhone.
Jobs-
Jax owns an iPhone.
I do.
I also
In
do.
my, I will. Let me just clarify. It's the only thing that works with my diabetes.
Cole
not even
has an iPhone. Cole has an iPhone.
I do have an iPhone.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But,
Cole, start it off,
listen.
I guess. Have fun.
So here's what I know about Steve Jobs. He's prematurely bald.
Ejaculating.
Died.
Oh. Cancer.
He has
Owned.
did. He had a
did,
turtleneck
yeah.
that I thought was great, but here's the thing:
It was not great.
Damn.
Not great.
Pixar.
It was not great.
Ooh,
Dude.
we picking on
Dude,
ours?
Pixar.
What about Pixar?
Pixar.
What
You
ab-
cannot. He made the company Pixar. He
Yeah,
made
that's
that
true. He
shit.
did. He was involved with Pixar.
And that
What does
shit's
Pixar
gold.
do?
Remember
Toy Story?
Toy Story? Remember, Up?
Yeah.
That's all him, man. I mean, you think
I only remember Down.
I don't see how you
I
could
don't
even
think that Up was him.
What about
I don't think he was involved in Up. I think he
Inside
might have
Out?
been involved in what? Was
101
he? I don't think he was
Dalmatians?
involved.
But here's the thing: is like he didn't make any of those movies. He just gave them
V for
money.
Yeah.
Fuck him.
Vendetta?
He just has money.
Yeah, he
Like,
just has
that's-
money.
has
He just
money,
said, "Hey,
yeah.
people, go make good movies. Here's money."
I mean, but Pixar, man.
That's
that
like-
shit
that's
makes
like
you
saying
cry
Bill
every
Well,
Gates
I mean,
invented the malaria
he did
vaccine.
start the company, and a lot of what Steve Jobs' like a lot of what he brings to companies, honestly, is the way that he blends different foreign philosophies on design, and he really tries to drive home, at least this is what he says to people, that he wants to make great products, and that, you know, the focus should not be on making money, it should be on making great products. And for better or for worse, in some cases, that's been his consistent design philosophy. Sometimes you end up with the iPhone, other times you end up with like the Apple III, you know.
I don't even know what the fuck that is.
The Apple III is the third computer that Apple made, and it was apparently very bad.
Unlucky.
The thing too is that when he was involved with a company called Next, he wanted to get into a bit of the obsessiveness that he was in. So when he was first booted out of Apple, I think probably in the late 80s, he created a company called Next, and their focus was going to be on educational computers and educational hardware. And I think that they were going to have, well, at some point he wanted Microsoft to develop software for them, because Apple said like, hey, you shouldn't make anything that's compatible with the Macintosh because we don't want you to infringe on, you know, like our market or whatever the heck. But
this is so
the
ironic.
next computer, the next computer is, he wanted it to be like this perfect cube, and he also wanted
he
wanted it to be like a matte black all around it, and he also wanted the inside of the cube. He also wanted the inside of the cube to be matte black.
Like shout out to MKBHD.
Even though nobody would ever see that. So, and when you make these types of things in a factory, the molds are made with like slight angles to make it easier to get the parts out of the mold. But he didn't want that. He didn't want any of the angles like to be even slight. He wanted them perfectly straight in the construction of the cube. Yeah. So it cost them a bunch of extra money to have these molds like hand done from scratch in, you know, like from a custom person or whatever. And then that machine ran into a bunch of problems because his design philosophies and how particular he was about them and how he wanted it to just be this perfect cube made it hard to engineer. The practicality of what you needed in a computer at that time just totally went contrary to what he wanted.
Now, let me clarify for a second for the people at home. We do not like Steve Jobs here.
We do not.
No.
Cosmic
does not. This is a Steve Jobs hit piece today.
So
people didn't understand
the start
that.
of
We're not. They're not here to support. My rebuttal is Ratatouille. That's one of the best.
Was he involved in that movie?
But it's Pixar, man.
I know it's Pixar, but okay. Here's the thing, Cole. All right.
That shit. Here's
the thing. What? Okay. Let's say you give a kid $5 to buy a hamburger 13 years ago. All right. You cannot take credit for everything that kid did for the next 13 years and go, well, I kept him alive with the sustenance from that hamburger.
Oh my God.
No, absolutely not.
What are you talking about?
I was going to say something way more unhinged, so good job.
Wait, what year did Ratatouille come out, dude?
The podcast will get canceled immediately.
Like, I don't know, 2006 or something. Like, he was
2007. Right? You know what Steve Jobs was doing in 2007, Cole?
Making art, the iPhone. Making fucking
He was making the
happen.
iPhone. He was doing the iPhone thing.
Dude, that's culture.
I thought you were going to say, like, cheating on his wife or something, but I guess
so. I went to the Wikipedia page for Ratatouille and did Control F Steve Jobs. Guess how many times I found Steve Jobs?
0.
In the Ratatouille Wikipedia. 0.
Guess how many times you found Pixar in that, though? Like 1 million. And then when you go to the Wikipedia page for Pixar, you type in Steve Jobs, he's bound to
Google,
be there.
when did Steve Jobs stop being involved with Pixar?
Pixar.
If they say
like
2011, I'm gonna feel really bad.
I won't feel bad. I'll laugh.
So Disney acquired Pixar in 2006.
Okay.
Also, he did not found the company. He bought it from its founders for $5 million.
Yeah, Nick ain't Nick, no one's founding shit. He buys things. He's a rich man. He just buys shit and just says that he did it. That's what all rich people do. They just buy things and they say, "I did this."
But
so
listen, I bought this beer and I drink it. So like, and I'm happy. This is making progress.
I will say this to Cole's point here. So when it comes to something like the Apple one, right? No, I don't think he does. I don't think he does.
I don't think he has a point.
We're going to create one. We're going to create one. It's fine.
Pixar is everyone's childhood. What are you talking about?
But it's not
like the
Steve
same
Jobs
argument that like Elon Musk's like nut huggers make. Okay, this is what you're doing right now. Do you understand what you've done?
All right, so
bro is hugging some nuts right now.
So
bro said to Steve Jobs, "Hey, those balls look heavy. You need me to hold them for you."
It's coming back to me, Brent.
Anyway, so continue with your Steve Jobs hit piece and ignore Cole.
So
I'm sure you have a couple things you want to touch on.
We've been building to this sort of stuff ever since I started randomly bringing up Steve Jobs, and I'm going to do my best not to.
2 months, by the way.
I'm going to do my best to not just plagiarize what Robert Evans did on his episode of Behind the Bastards about Steve Jobs. I'm going to do my best not to just simply plagiarize that.
I love plagiarism.
So I read like a bunch of the Steve Jobs. Well, I listened to an audiobook about a bunch of the Steve Jobs, about Steve Jobs' life. I still have to read it's actually sitting behind me, his daughter's memoir. And I still need to read that, but I've read a couple of excerpts, but I need to read it in full. But Steve Jobs is a guy that is mostly just an ideas man. He would be nowhere if it were not for the talent of the people around him, like, and them being just willing to put up with his shit. This guy for years and years and years was verbally and mentally abusive to pretty much everybody that he worked with, from the start of Apple to, his death. I mean, maybe not just till his dying day, but till the time that he stopped working professionally. Though one of the few things that I will give him, which you don't have to give it to bad people, by the way, you don't have to give them any credit. But what I will say is that he thinks that if it were not for him, like, and Wozniak says this, Steve Wozniak says this too, which Steve Wozniak's the actual genius behind Apple. Steve Wozniak Steve Wozniak says that he could not have sold the Apple I by himself. It took Steve Jobs to do that, which I have to say is probably
Jobs?
True.
More like Steve sells. Got him.
Because, I mean, that guy, like, he just had a way with selling to people. And later on in his life, he would be very good about, like, understanding what consumers would want and everything, and like what they would specifically want in their pocket. He was even sketching up like the idea of laptops years and years before people were building them. But also, during that time, he yelled at an 8-year-old girl who ate a hamburger in front of him and told her that she needed to get her life together and that she was eating shit, and that he also made fun of her speech impediment to her face.
Okay, that's not.
Okay.
That's
I was gonna say you were starting to pull me back on the Steve Jobs side for a second until it went back into the ableism, and now I'm good.
He totally brought this little girl. He brought this little girl to tears because she ate meat in front of him, and again he made fun of her speech impediment, and he was like, "Don't you think everybody hears you? You need to get yourself together." And it was just like, oh my God, dude. And mind you, he did this not only.
I just thought about that. Finding Nemo.
We already know your thoughts on Finding Nemo, so we're not going to go any further there.
Hey guys,
you need to watch back a few episodes.
Guys, I have a fun fact about clownfish.
Well, audio listeners, Cosmic spat out his drink.
Anyway, so not only did he do this in front of his child, but also in front of the mother of his child.
Oh, that's
So-
his child?
Oh.
No, he didn't do it
I
to
thought
his
it was some
child.
random girl.
It was, I think
Oh,
it was
just
like
someone
maybe a
else's child.
family member that was young, or like the daughter's friend or something like that.
It
I
doesn't
actually
matter
forget the
who it
details
was.
there.
He did it to
It's an
8-year-old
8-year-old
child.
kid. Yeah,
mean,
like 7, 8-year-old kid.
You're right, but also it's just, adds to the
Also,
table,
check
but-
this out, Cole.
You're right, but
You ready?
Pixar!
If you thought that
yeah,
was
dude.
bad, all right. So
Do you remember that fucking creepy baby like short film they had at the end of like Toy Story or whatever? You know what I'm
speaking
talking
of
about?
creepy
With the fucking
babies,
little toy guy.
What?
no,
No.
I don't remember that.
What?
Not
How
at
do you guys
all.
not know about that, dude? It's the fucking creepiest shit ever. I implore all of you to look up the Pixar baby. It's actually just so creepy.
Don't.
I don't know why Steve Jobs even was successful with that. It was a horrible animation. I mean, it was revolutionary for the time. Sorry, I keep interrupting you. You're on.
No,
you're
it's not. You're
trying to get a ball
interrupting me.
rolling.
It's you're being
You're fine.
fucking stupid. I'm sorry. I'm just,
fucking
It's a real film. What do you want me to do?
that's not what this is about. That's not. And it's the principle of the thing. Steve Jobs didn't do fucking shit. Okay, he purchased
them
the
money.
company.
He did give them money.
Speaking of
So-
Steve Jobs,
So speaking of Steve Jobs, so
my
I don't think
favorite
I've
Steve
told-
Jobs
Elon Musk
story
on your wall.
because
I have to know now.
my favorite Steve
I have
Jobs
to know
story is the very beginning of when the first iPhone was being made. I don't
Yeah.
remember all the details, but anecdotally, he had people like working around the clock and was forcing them to work around the clock. And if you dig into this, and you like, there's like so many people that like quit the company, left the company, and it was even so extreme that people would just live at the office, like they would be there like 24/7, and like he would feed them or whatever the fuck, but they were there 24/7 working on the iPhone, the original iPhone.
Wow.
Trying to get it done in time for the keynote. And some people like to spin this in a positive way, but if you know Steve Jobs, you know that he was just yelling at those niggas the whole time.
the whole time,
people
dude.
got divorced over them being at work all the time. Like
Yeah.
it was very,
Absolutely.
very
Hell yeah.
bad.
Good for them. I think we
Yeah,
should have more
divorce.
divorce.
Yeah,
That's
divorce.
what I'm getting out of this conversation. Yeah, divorce. Yippee.
So memes aside, yeah, like it wasn't that bad in the 80s, I will say, but like, I mean, he was definitely just like, and this is the crazy thing about this guy. This is the real fucked shit, is that people, and the biography does this a lot. The biography is a little worshipy for my standards, and it always talks about how he will like build people up and say like, oh, you can do this. Like even when they would tell him like, no, Steve, that's not possible right now. And then they would be able to do it. And it was seen as like, and he would try to spin it as like, oh, well, look at how we've pushed this thing. And look at, we did it, you did it. And he would spin it as like him believing in these people and their talent, but it's really just abuse of their good ideas. Right. And it's abuse of like, what's it called? It's abuse of labor, and it's just, it is a huge tactic that abusers use where they will tell you some shit to get something out of you, and you'll probably feel like crap at the end of it, especially because somebody like Steve Jobs, if you have an idea, he'll go, well, that's shit, without even explaining it to you. And then the next week he'll come back to you, repeat your idea to you, and say, so I had this great idea the other day. He did that to people on multiple occasions too. But this is like a huge tactic abusers use, where like they'll be like, look at how much you've done. Look at how strong you are now. And that's a lot of the shit that he did with his employees in the fucking 80s.
Also
He
known as
also
love
tried to see
bombing.
himself as like, he tried to see himself as a rebel or as a pirate or as like a member of the counterculture. He went and visited India for like 7 months to find his guru after he dropped out of college.
Oh my
That's some
God.
Beatles shit.
Yeah, how about you find some
Yeah.
bitches, Steve Jobs? On God.
Yeah, for real.
Has there been like any comparing and contrasting of him and like Thomas Edison? Because I feel like didn't Thomas Edison probably do like the same things? Like he kind of just like took other people's ideas.
I know very little about Thomas Edison, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were some there were some pieces out there like that.
Well, Thomas Edison
That's kind of a
famously
bummer.
stole electricity and just sold it better than another guy, even though the other guy was the
Yeah,
inventor
that's true.
or whatever
Yeah.
the fuck.
Yeah, I just mean I don't know, because I'm familiar with like what people's beef with Thomas Edison is. It's just like I don't know if anybody's written extensively like about the parallels.
I don't think
there.
it exists, but there is parallel with the iPhone, because the touch screen part of the iPhone, like how you could touch the screen and interact with the interface, was actually stolen from another company. Yeah,
I forget which company it was.
I don't remember either, but I remember.
I stole it really well though.
Yeah, yep. I mean that's the thing.
Yep.
But they weren't the original. They weren't the originators of that. They just were the first to put it in a functional form that people wanted to buy, right? Because the other people made, I think, a product of some sort, but it didn't. Catch.
There was a bunch of shit that like Apple stole from Xerox PARC, and there was like because they like went to this thing at Xerox PARC and they noticed all this shit that the people at Xerox were doing, but Xerox didn't invest in computing at all. So Apple brought it all over to themselves for like the Macintosh, like all these ideas. And then once Bill Gates actually like started incorporating this stuff into what he was shipping out, and like making stuff for IBM and all that, apparently Steve Jobs like called him up to have him come down to Apple and yell at him. And he was like, "You're stealing things from me, Bill, and you need to admit this," and blah, blah, blah. And Bill Gates says to him,
"I'll shoot you in the head with a gun if you ever talk to me again."
I mean, essentially, but but Bill Gates says to him, "Well, Steve, the way that I see it, I broke into our buddy Xerox's house to steal their TV, but then I saw that you stole it first."
That's a gangster quote. Yeah.
So yeah, no, like he literally is like Steve Jobs is like very strange, because I can clearly see the genius behind how terrible of a person he is, but it's like
Rose said, "I see the vision."
I mean,
it's like said, "I want to be him for real."
No, absolutely.
No, you
want
to be him, Cole.
No, I absolutely.
What are you talking about? I'm just talking about cinematic masterpieces that he
that Steve Jobs had nothing to do with outside of his money. Anybody could have given them that money.
I also just want to say, calling
guess.
Pixar movies masterpieces is a bit of a stretch.
Toy Story, okay. Toy Story was definitely a masterpiece. You know who co-wrote that? Actually, never mind. That guy's canceled now. We're not going to talk about that guy.
John Lennon?
So, no, Joss Whedon.
Dan Schneider? Okay.
So,
Jaxler if Dan Schneider co-wrote Toy Story?
Oh my God.
How different it would have turned out.
Whoa. Can you imagine? Oh my God.
What else would have been written on Woody's
Henry Cavill as Buzz Lightyear in 2024, dude.
Holy shit.
To infinity and beyond,
dude. That he'd be ripped as fuck.
Well, and then it would be all in black and white in 4:3 ratio.
Yeah, I was about to say 4:3. Yeah.
And actually, Buzz Lightyear would be standing there like, "Woody, to infinity and
then he'd fucking laser him with his fucking.
Yeah, he would just like kill a random person in the crowd.
He just fucking dies.
And he'd be like, "I'm a hero."
He'd kill Andy, bro.
Oh man, no, Andy would have a shotgun for no reason. He would just have the shotgun.
Yeah,
he would never use it.
House.
He would. Oh man, he would just. Well, I mean, like adult Andy. I'm not talking about kid Andy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Does the age make a difference here? I mean, I feel like he still dies, right? Am I following the conversation correctly?
No, you're not.
Okay, never mind.
Now I got a question for you, Cosmic. So you're listening and you've researched a lot about Steve Jobs. What was the thing where you were like the final kind of straw, quote unquote, where it was like, you know what, this guy is just so that he's just fucked up. Like,
I mean,
gone.
it was probably the hamburger story, but before that, I will tell you there is something that is arguably worse, because it has a much more lasting effect on his relationship with his daughter, and it really sets the tone for, like, how terrible he is and how much he does at the expense of others. And this I'll get into like some things later, because there's a couple of things that are connected to Apple going public that really show his true colors and how he treats people. But when his daughter was born, the mother of his child, he refused to acknowledge the birth of his daughter. and he did not talk to the mother or anything. And she was like applying for food stamps and struggling for a very long time. And, you know,
Wow.
Steve Jobs at that point was worth millions of dollars. Not quite as much yet, but we'll get there, trust me. And eventually the state of California realized, why are we paying for like the food for Steve Jobs' kid? He should be supporting the mother. You know, so the state of California sues him and says, hey,
shit.
what the fuck? You know, and
Hey,
then so
jackass.
he finally decides to acknowledge this and then quickly gets his lawyers to lock down the deal, because days or weeks or whatever later, Apple goes public and his value rises to like $250 million. So he has his lawyers lock down the deal early so that he has to pay less child support.
Gangster.
Wow.
Gangster move.
Now, and this is the shit that pissed me off about the biography by Walter Isaacson, is that Isaacson never comes out and says this. Like, and he never talks about the implications of it. He says, oh, you know, Steve figured that since Apple was going public, he might as well get the deal on with. And then after all this is done, he goes about his life, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, are we really just glossing over the fact that like he refuses to support his child as much as he could? Right? Like, he ignores her for months, or I don't actually remember how long he ignores her for.
Weeks,
Maybe
months,
it's years.
same thing.
But it's like, what the fuck, bro? And then here's the other thing, is that somebody that was pretty close to him in Apple was not a salaried employee. I think they were an hourly employee, or maybe they were like just underneath a certain tier of salary. So at the position that they were at, when Apple went public, they did not have a lot of stock options. So they were not amongst I think it was Kotke was his last name. But he did not become a millionaire like a lot of the other people that were closely involved with the founding of Apple because of the position that he was in. So he kind of confronts Jobs about this, and Jobs just tells him, well, you're not in a high enough position to benefit from it. And Wozniak or somebody else says to Jobs, listen, dude, I'll match, like, we need to give him some options, like he's your friend, blah, blah, blah. I'll match the amount of stocks, or like, I'll match the amount of stocks that you give him. And Steve goes, okay, then I'll give him 0. And like,
Get fucking
holy fuck, dude. Like, this is somebody that considered him a friend, considered him like, you know, a good boss and everything. And, you know, this person is Kotke, again, I believe is his name. He's quoted as, I think, saying like, you know, he really just will toss you out with the trash, essentially. Or like he'll just use you to get ahead. And it's very clear. The other thing too, with Apple going public and like him acknowledging his daughter, but still being like ashamed of it, is that at some point Time magazine sent a journalist over to Apple to interview a bunch of people. And Steve was convinced that he was going to be Man of the Year that year. Now, this was never the case. Time had never communicated this to him. They had decided before any of this happened that the computer was going to be the machine of the year, because they realized that they could not personify, like no one person personified the computer at that point. So they went with the inanimate object of the computer and talked about the different people that were working in computing at that time. And somebody like the journalist asked somebody at Apple if Steve if Steve had named the computer the Lisa after his daughter. And the person was like, yeah, of course. And because Steve denied this. He named the computer the Lisa and it was like, no, it's not named after my daughter. And so the guy was like, so the employee was like, yeah, of course it's named after his daughter. Like, what are we talking about here? And Steve, like, Jobs was furious when he found out about this. Like, it was, and the guy that they interviewed about it, he was like, look, dude, I'm not going to let my friend deny being a father. Like, I'm not going to let him deny what is really going on here. And
remember, kids,
Jobs was now
billionaires
convinced.
Don't have friends. Continue.
It's true. And like Jobs was convinced that because of like the things that the people at his company had said, and because of the terrible writing that the journalist had done, he was scrapped from being man of the year, and he was, burned and all that sort of shit. And it's just like, no, dude, you were never man of the year. It was never happening, bro. Like
Delulu land, as they say.
He was delusional. Also, fun fact, when the Lisa was being launched, they told him to not talk about the Macintosh in the interviews and like the press tours that he did. And guess what he did? He talked about the Macintosh, even though the Macintosh was set to come out like 2 years after the Lisa. So he was trying to dead on arrival the Lisa, And the way that he treats this team of people that are working on the Lisa, as well as the project itself, really speaks to the parallel between how he views that inanimate object and how he views it like as a inconvenience, essentially, and how he views his daughter, which is that they are basically one and the same at this point. When the Lisa is like discontinued after a while, he tells the Lisa team that they're going to, like, quarter of them are going to be laid off. And he's like, you guys made a bad product. And it's like, you've been fucking dogging us at every turn, dude. You've been trying to crush the Lisa ever since you started working on the Macintosh. What are you talking about? Like, there was a lot, dude. There's a lot in that fucking book that he's just a garbage human being. It's so fucking bad.
And the pirate flag represents the Macintosh, not the Lisa, by the way, for those. Tying back to the pirate flag, I remembered the other thing. Yeah. Because there was two different, like, buildings.
It was also because they flew it also because, like, Steve and his, company viewed themselves as pirates, essentially, or rebels. Yeah.
They were more rebellious.
Rebelling against...
They're rebellious and innovative.
They called them... They said that they were rebelling against Big Blue, which was IBM at the time.
Yeah.
So... Like,
they weren't, by the way.
I just feel like
they innovated to the most bland product of all fucking time. Continue, Cole.
Yeah.
Oh shit. I feel like that's just like young people who start tech companies and then get rich are just so weird.
Yeah.
Like
young people who get rich are so weird.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true too.
That's also true.
But I guess you kind of just notice it with the tech people because they're kind of like, they like to be in your face, sort of thing.
I mean, I noticed it with like streamers.
I think that what's especially weird about Steve Jobs is that he continually saw himself as an artist. And this is like the same way that I guess like AI prompters see themselves as artists, which is you tell people what to make and then they make it. And like, because you had the idea, you consider yourself the artist.
But
like,
you ain't shit, nigga.
Exactly, dude.
You are a visionary, and we will give you the credit for having the idea. Mm-hmm. You are a very good person at making ideas. Mm-hmm. However, you don't do the thing. Like, you're not on the ground floor doing the thing, actually making the innovation, so you don't get the cred, right? You can't go commission an artist, right? Just chat. Sorry, podcast listeners, imagine that you go on twitter.com and you go to an artist and you commission them and you're like, yo, paint me a fucking like a mountain with like a fucking brick like on the side of it randomly. And then you tweet it out and you're like, hey guys, I made this thing. You can't do that. It's not yours. Just because you had the idea doesn't make that thing you don't get the credit for it. The artist is the one that actually drew the fucking thing. You didn't draw the fucking thing. You just told them what to do, right? Different things.
One of the few things too that I will say about Jobs is that when the Mac was like near completion, when the Mac was nearing completion, he actually had everybody that was on the Macintosh team sign the inside of the case. And every Macintosh that was made had all of their signatures engraved into it. And people on the Macintosh team are quoted as saying that, like, Steve also helped us see that what we were doing was art. And like one of the few good things that he wanted to do was he wanted to not just see tech as tech, but he wanted to see it at like, the aesthetic parts as well as the tech parts and how like a good looking product can make all the difference, etc. And the fact that he could actually inspire these people to understand that what they were doing was, you know, in a way, art is neat. And if it came from a better person, I would say it was a good thing, but it came from a shitty person like Jobs. So it's neat, and I'm glad at least, you know, that got done, but I also don't want to romanticize human suffering.
Steve Jobs is a sick person with sick thoughts. I think niggas like him should die.
Well, good for, I have some very good news for you.
I was going to say I have great news, honestly. The weird thing too about so
go ahead, Jax.
Obviously, go ahead, Jax.
No, this is probably a side tangent. So if you want to finish your thought, then.
Sure. Then complete.
Well, I was
complete
gonna say,
your
so
package, Cosmic.
Obviously, there
Let's look
is
at your
no good
package,
type of-
Cosmic.
All right,
Nice
so
Audio listeners,
there
Cosmic look
obviously
down.
there obviously is no easy type of cancer to deal with, right? But the kind that Steve Jobs
That was
got,
such a whiplash.
oh,
Holy
yeah,
shit.
it's fine.
Yo, shout outs to Whiplash
Yeah,
the
yeah.
game.
Crap.
Yeah, great game. But the kind that Steve Jobs ended up getting had a very high like survivability rate.
high.
And if he, I know my voice cracked.
Let the man talk.
motherfucker.
No.
All right, yeah. He had cancer, had a high survival rate, and then he didn't survive
Yeah,
that shit.
it had a high survival rate. And if he had
I
actually
know where you're
listened, if he had listened to his doctors for 9 months, he probably would have survived. But in his hubris, which I didn't talk about, how he thought that he unlocked a mucusless diet. We'll get into that in a second. Okay. He thought that by eating like these weird experimental diets, including just fruits or like just apples, that he would be able to beat cancer. And
But an apple a day keeps the
I had an
doctor
apple
away.
for
Like he's
breakfast.
yeah,
He's
he
just
has-
kind of doing what they told him.
Yeah, like-
crazy.
what the heck, dude? Like, yeah, he had an apple only diet when he was like in his early 20s. For like a week, he did that.
This guy's
Yeah.
full of himself. Anyway,
He was weird, yeah. But it's again like his hubris in thinking that he knows what is best all the time
Killed
that
him.
caused him to die in such a painful way that he did. But that pain was so great, and it reduced him so much that I'm pretty sure he actually just apologized to his daughter. As far as I remember, that's what ends up going down.
I think you're wrong, and I think that he didn't apologize to his daughter.
I mean, I can just double check.
Oh, okay.
You know,
I was ready for
if
argument.
if
That's what I'm here
Jaxler
for.
wants to go on the tangent now.
Oh, I was just gonna say this whole bit just kind of reminds me. I feel like I bring this up like every time we talk about someone who's like either like super famous or super Nestani, I think is chuckling. I think he knows where I'm going with this, but I just like it, especially with regards to money. Like if you end up becoming like successful, you're kind of given every fucking excuse for your behavior because you have this resource that you can use to pay your way past having to grow as a person. And like people like Steve Jobs, like Elon Musk are like top tier examples of that. Like, I mean, look at fucking Elon Musk right now. I mean, he fucking didn't want to grow up and like not get, made fun of. So he bought fucking Twitter. Right? Like
The specific examples of Elon too is that in the development of very recent things, the Cybertruck specifically, he literally tweeted out something that he wanted the Cybertruck to do, or he said that the Cybertruck was going to do, and his production team, someone came up to their production team like that was doing the fucking production work on Cybertruck and were like, "Hey, have you seen Elon's tweet?" And they were like, "No." And then they looked at it and they were just like, "Oh, I guess we have to do this now." And that's how they find out about some of the changes to the car. And a lot of things that go on with Tesla is he walks by the production team. He's like, "Well, I think you should do this." And he like walks away. And then they just have to make it happen.
And figure it out.
Eerily similar to Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Except
I will say
maybe without
that-
the verbal abuse. I haven't heard much about Elon being abusive.
Well, I will
necessarily,
say
but
that,
he is.
that flippant
Yeah.
behavior though is just like crazy, where it's just like, oh, he tweets out something and then now we have to change how we're doing this production thing to accommodate
I think there's also
a tweet.
I feel like there's also
I don't know if we get this. A tweet is changing how a product is being made. Do you understand how insane that is? Anyway, continue.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. It's absolutely
I feel
insane.
like to sort of build on that, I feel like these kinds of positions, not just, job wise, but also society wise, attract the wrong kind of people, right? Because
definitely,
if you're someone who's a psycho and wants power, you're going to go to the whatever avenue will give you the greatest amount of that, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why capitalism is so popular, because it's like, oh, how do I get influence and power? Oh, there's this cool thing called money.
Yeah.
And if I get a lot of that, then it doesn't matter how I get that.
Money.
Yeah,
it's one of those things where like money can just cause you to be seen as a better person than you are, because I think it was like Pablo Escobar, with all the money that he had, helped build up like Florida's economy so that he was seen as like a pretty good person in the eyes of the locals. But obviously he was a drug lord, so like,
hey man, bigger number, better person. That's how it goes.
True.
Or not Al. Wait,
you were thinking Al Pacino.
Yeah, that's why
Tony Montana.
Sorry, Capone.
Also, Nestani, Steve Jobs did actually apologize to his daughter on his deathbed.
That's
I still
wait, on his deathbed. I still don't respect that fucking pussy ass nigga. Go out style.
I don't respect it either. But it did happen.
Bro killed himself with fruit.
Hey, bro.
He died the fruitiest death possible. How is that not more stylish?
Wow.
Yo, Steve Jobs was fruity on his deathbed. That's crazy.
Damn, bro.
Wow.
I should also note, by the way, that this dude cried a lot. Like, he cried an obscene amount to try and get what he wanted.
Ooh, manipulative criers.
Yeah,
really
manipulative
cool.
crying.
Oh, so just a massive pussy. Okay.
He sounds like a theater kid.
He sounds like a bitchy
Just a
diva
theater
to me.
That is a bitchy diva hoe if I've ever seen one.
A bitch eating hoe? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
And anyway, ladies and gentlemen, so now that you know where Apple has come from with Steve Jobs, now you understand that there is a lawsuit against them of being a monopoly nowadays. And they are such, and you can just see like the roots of the company being malicious. It just changed hands. It didn't go anywhere. Steve Jobs didn't leave and Apple magically became this good company. No, they got worse, actually. They made it even harder to leave their ecosystem with iMessage, FaceTime, the Apple Watch Apple Watch, by the way, doesn't connect to anything else besides an iPhone. So if you ever
they also just suck.
Yeah.
Lightning cables don't connect to anything but Apple products.
Watches are very good.
You know?
I won't give you that. But like, like
Sure.
all their like, you commonly hear the phrase, or maybe not, but like if you haven't heard the phrase walled garden, that is what Apple has created around their products, where you get their iPhone, and then parts of the walled garden are the AirPods, because the AirPods work specifically better with Apple products. The noise canceling is better, and there's some other tweaks. Apple Watches literally don't work with anything other than an iPhone. So the thing that the lawsuit is pretty much attacking is the walled garden, where they're like, hey, there's no reason that iMessage shouldn't work on Android devices. Hey, there's no reason FaceTime shouldn't work on these other devices. Hey, there's no reason that the Apple Watch shouldn't connect to a Samsung phone, for example, right? And all of these things, it's all in a big lawsuit. You can, if you want to hear more about that, recently on the Waveform podcast, shout out to MKBHD, they did a pretty deep dive on this, if you want the deep dive. But that's the super TLDR. And so just remember that Apple is a sick company with sick thoughts. Just remember that. And
he thinks people like this.
I do.
It's weird that like it's interesting to me that like that sort of thing started like 40 years earlier, right? Because on the Apple II, Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs argued about how many expansion slots it should have. And Wozniak argued that it should have 8 expansion slots so that people could customize it and all that sort of shit. And Steve Jobs said, no, it should only have 2 for a modem and a printer.
Yep.
And Wozniak was like, no, dude, what are we talking about? And Wozniak actually wins that argument. But after that point, their paths like pretty much just diverge like for a long time.
And that's always been the motive of Apple, right? Because the thing I will always give Apple is that they are the easiest piece of tech to use. If you know nothing about tech, Apple's interfaces and everything is the easiest gateway into getting used to technology and to getting into this thing. With that being said, since they are the easiest one to get you into it,
stretch it a lot.
They take advantage of the consumer and they're like, oh, you don't know what this thing is worth. I'm going to charge you $200 for 128 gigs of storage. And I'm going to do that over and over and over again for every single product line. And then I'm going to create my things where like, oh, if you want to get a fucking not an iMac, but what's the fucking, not the MacBook Pro, the other one. MacBook Air. If you want to get a MacBook Air with functional storage solution, well, it's like $1,500. But if you want to get the bottom spec MacBook Pro, oh, it's just right here at 2K. You know, just go up. You know, and they use that tactic, and that like is just such an advantage taker, because then you also have the thing where people are like, oh, I'm just going to buy the bottom spec thing, whatever. For example, my friend just bought an iPhone, IRL friend. He doesn't know shit about tech, right? Actually, he knows a little bit about tech, but not that much, right? Like, because he's an audio engineer. He can get around, right? He knows enough. Can get around, but he doesn't know a lot about this side of the stuff. And he bought the lowest spec iPhone with 70 gigs of storage, which means that usable, he has about 50, which if you don't know what a gigabyte is, because apparently a lot of people don't, 70 gigabytes is fucking nothing this day and age. You shoot like 10 videos on your phone, you're there. You are there. Like, you use, like, literally in the second week, he was like, I don't have any space on my phone. What can I do about this? And I had to help him set up certain things so that he can use his phone. And the side tangent, crazy thing, he wouldn't just return the phone. I told him to return the phone and just get a better one.
Like, why wouldn't you just return the phone?
Because he's the hardest fucking head person of all time, right? Dumb thing. But that's the thing.
Oh, wow, that's a lot coming from you.
Yes. But like, it's why we get along. But like, he just wouldn't return the phone. But that's the thing, is that like they use that, and then you take the phone and then are like, well, I already moved everything over to this phone. Well, it's easy to just move up to the next iPhone with like more storage, and then you can just transfer it super easily, because they make it very, very easily to transfer. And then it's just like, oh, now I have the more expensive phone, and they catch you like that, and then they keep you. Go.
So I'm confused. I feel like, does not every cell phone company kind of do that to some extent, though?
Yeah, that's something I was going to bring up.
It is becoming more popular now, because if you notice, there are similar walled gardens being built. Samsung's building their own walled garden with their Samsung buds that work best with Samsung
Microsoft.
phone. However, they don't
Windows.
gate lock any of the features of these Samsung buds, right? They basically all that happens is that they connect quicker, and that's pretty much it. You can still get the noise canceling, you can still hear the thing. Like, all the hardware works on any phone. Right, which is how it should be, and that's the primary entity of the lawsuit, is that the hardware should work with other hardware, because right now it just doesn't in some cases. Most notably the Apple Watch. That's their like strongest gunshot in the lawsuit right now.
I think that's similarly right. I think there was a thing recently where companies started to be mandated to just use USB-C for everything.
That was in Europe. That is the only reason why the iPhone now has USB-C, even though it's USB-C 2.0, which, if you all don't know, is fucking garbage. Why not 3.0 on this fucking $1,000 phone? Anyway, basically 2.0 and 3.0 is just different layers of speed. You just get more speed, which is useful to some people, not useful to other people. Whatever, it's a cost-saving measure, and a kind of like, well, we did it, but fuck you, we're not going to give you a good one, which is just bullshit, because no one has had USB-C 2.0, and like my fucking S10 Plus doesn't have a fucking 2.0 USB-C port, and that's shit's from 2019, 5 years ago.
Apple was like, we'll do the correct thing, but not the right thing, you know?
Yeah.
It's like...
And like...
It's like...
I'm really waiting for Cole to like drop another Pixar film and be like, guys, but have you considered?
Inside Out 2 was apparently a banger.
This is all to say that
I hate
Apple
to tell you this
has been taking advantage of people for a very long time. It is literally in their DNA and their code with Steve Jobs, and it has just perpetuated. And every other company takes advantage of people. Recently, Google,
I was gonna say
Google released the newest Google Buds. I believe they did the same thing that Apple did. You can't have the noise cancellation feature on other phones that aren't Google phones. Which
wait, okay, so can I? This might be a stupid question.
Go ahead.
But like, why is it bad if you have a branded device and you want to use the branded accessory has to work with that? So like, why is that a bad thing as someone who doesn't know?
So the thing is that like the main argument is that once you are in Apple's ecosystem, it kills all competition, right? The entity is, this is a monopoly corporation in America specifically, because iPhones are not popular anywhere else other than America. Let's keep that very, very clear. They're an American only thing, basically.
Yeah.
And so the lawsuit is, you are a monopoly in America. Most notably, I think the most damning stat was like, it was either 82% or 92% of teenagers or people under 18, if they were asked what phone are you going to use, almost all of them said iPhone, because of iMessage, FaceTime, walled garden. Commonly, I'm sure all of you have experienced this or have seen it or something. If someone doesn't have an iPhone in middle school or high school, people make fun of them for being poor or whatever.
Yeah.
It was for sure a thing at my school.
Where I'm from, I've seen that.
So when I was
so
in middle
common,
school,
and so what happens is that, I'm going to keep going. So what happens is that you have that dichotomy. So it creates a lot of pressure on these kids to get an iPhone. They're like, Mom, please give me an iPhone, because they're literally just getting fucking bullied for having an Android, even though, by the way, Android phones are just as expensive, if not more expensive than iPhones.
Yeah.
But like, kids don't get that because they're like, oh, and it's just it's a culture thing, right? It's a culture thing now. And so it branches past it. And so to answer your question specifically about, shit, I lost my train of thought. Repeat your question. I was about to get somewhere.
Why branded phone and branded accessories?
So the reason why this is a bad thing is because if you get an iPhone and you get an Apple Watch and you get the AirPods, you just bought like $1,800, $2,000 worth of things. I don't know how much this shit costs. But you bought a lot of money of this thing, right? And if you want to change your phone, you have to throw away your Apple Watch, and you don't have to throw away your AirPods, but you have to throw away your Apple Watch, which is like a $400, $500 thing, right? It creates a lot more friction to switch because this person's giving you better hardware, and you just will not switch because you have to switch at the expense of these other things that intentionally don't work. But if Apple was forced to make their watches work with Android phones, which they should be able to, by the way, because Samsung's watch can work with any phone. Google's watch can work with any phone. It works better with their phones. But it works with other phones. Yeah. That's the key difference. It works with other phones. It's fine if something works better on your device, but if it doesn't work at all with other devices, that's the problem, right? And that's the whole core.
It's sort of the same thing with like, what's it called? Like if I plug in my DualSense controller right into my PC, so
if Microsoft said you can't use a PlayStation controller on Windows because they own Xbox, right?
Yeah, so like I can plug in my DualSense, and Steam might not support DualSense, like on every game, but it'll support it on a bunch of games, and there will at least be the option to configure the controller with Steam input. Right. And it might not be as good as, just natively connecting it to my PS5, but it works. It's the same thing with honestly, you could even make the argument that it is anti the idea of American free market, because the idea is that you should have the ability to choose. And when a company forces you down certain avenues for your purchasing power, you don't have purchasing power anymore. Yeah. And the idea of the free market is that consumers have purchasing power to make decisions about specific products that they are going to buy and what is in their best interest.
And on top of this, a really good alternate thing in India and China, for example, it is a fucking like they do some crazy shit with their phones to try and just stand out, because everything, especially in China specifically, uses WeChat, right? WeChat is everything. You can download it on any phone. It doesn't matter what the fuck you have. They use WeChat for everything. They use it to pay for shit, get shit delivered, food, everything. Everything goes through WeChat, right? Which is a different conversation, but you can have any phone, and because you can have any phone, all the competition is what can the phone do? What can the hardware do? And if you care about the hardware a lot on your phone, there's a lot of like different edge cases. Like this phone has a fucking kickstand. This phone has like super, super fast charging. This phone has a giant fucking battery. This phone has like the brightest screen. There's so many different things that are like for the phone, because we're talking about a phone is a piece of hardware, right? And it should be about what can this hardware do, right? Not necessarily about the software. And that is like the like you're not in Apple's ecosystem because of their hardware. You're there because of the software. And how they lock other people out of accessing their devices.
Exactly.
And so that is a problem. And similarly, they did this thing. Windows or Microsoft was accused of being monopoly years ago as well, and they basically did the same thing to Microsoft that they are about to do, because Microsoft didn't allow QuickTime to work on Microsoft computers, which was like dominant, like 90%, 99% or whatever the fuck of the market share, right? And so they broke up that monopoly, and then now to help competition and help Apple, companies like Apple grow, right? And grow Apple did, and now guess who's too big for the britches right now? Apple. And so they're cutting it down because they have a shocking amount of market share, especially in the younger generations with that like 82% or 90%. We'll just say 82% because I for sure have seen that number, but 82% of like people under 18 are planning on buying an iPhone, right? And they're going to stay there, which is alarming. Like of that amount of dominance.
Something I wanted to bring up as well, and so for context, my perspective is when I switched high schools halfway through high school, and basically the entire school was built around like just like Macs in the computer lab. Like everyone just used Mac and Apple shit, right? That was like how the school was set up around. And so by the time I'm at high school, I spent basically 2 years working there, like basically as a student employee, getting people's computers set up, doing repairs, hardware and software type of stuff, right? And something I kind of realized, not even just working on it then, but especially now, like in addition to what Nestani was talking about, was, because, it's a lot more about that software than the hardware stuff, right? And Apple really doesn't like it when you are messing with things or like trying to tear things apart.
Oh,
so I'll give you.
I was gonna bring up rights to repair too.
We might be about to say the same thing. Go.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. One of the things we used to do a lot was we would have issues with like hard drives and batteries and stuff like that. And so or like disk drives, right? And those, I don't put disk drives in them anymore, which duh, right? But like. Like we, one of the things is we have to learn to unscrew it and take out the hard drive and, undust stuff. And like, or for example, like someone lost a key on their keyboard, so we needed to replace it or something like that. On a modern day MacBook, if you want to get at the keyboard, you have to, so the battery and everything, it's like glued. It's glued in there. It's not even held by screws. It's fucking glued. So if you want to like actually get in there, and again, this is voiding your warranty, by the way. If you want to get in there, you have to like get like a heat pack or something like that to heat up the glue so that it undoes, so you can actually get at the fucking keyboard.
Okay, I'm going to aid your point here. Everyone does the gluing thing. Recently, I literally just took a heat gun to my phone, S10 Plus 2019 phone, and I replaced the battery myself. I had to put a heat gun into this and scoop out the battery and take out the adhesive, whatever. That's a normal thing. However, what isn't normal is that on, I forget which iMac it was, but on one of the recent like Mac Minis or like iMacs or whatever, if you took out the SSD to upgrade the SSD, it would lock your computer. because it wasn't the original SSD in the computer.
Which is
what I thought you were getting at. That's what I thought you were getting at. So they don't do things like that where if you literally remove a piece of hardware, because guess what? Upgrading it, Apple does this thing. When I say they charge you $200 for 128 gigs of storage, 128 gigs of storage is like fucking $20. It's not $200. They add a fucking zero after it, right? And so if you change this yourself, they brick your computer.
And then a history lesson here. A history lesson
here. Don't buy
here.
Apple products. You're right.
Again, 40 years ago, Steve Jobs is telling his employees that they need to make special tools that will open the cases of their computers.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's because the reason I had a job in high school.
He does not want to fucking allow people to have any customizability.
Yeah, it's fucking funny too, because you were mentioning that about the SSD. There was one time where someone was having issues with their drive, or they were like, "Hey, I want to upgrade this or what have you." And so we open it up, and it's like it was one of the first ones we had seen with the SSD, and there was like and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm like making shit up, but I remember like seeing some kind of like tape there where it was like the warranty tape, like where if it's like if you unscrew this, it's going to rip immediately. The tape, and it's void. Yeah. It's void.
Mm-hmm. You cannot open.
You're like, if you even like think about opening up the back of the computer, you're like. Unless you're very careful or just like look at it. Honestly, if you're looking at it, you might as well just void the warranty right there.
If you look at it, you void the warranty. That's what they did. Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. And it sucks too because, and this isn't just an Apple thing, but this is a lot of tech things. Mm-hmm. Things are not built to last. There's a term.
To repair.
Well, not only just right to repair. It's this thing, planned obsolescence, which is just the idea that. They build their technology and their hardware with the it's not like it's like you build a car and expect it to die in 2 years, right? Which if you were buying a car and they were like, yeah, no, people usually this is the turnover rate on cars or whatever, you'd be like, are you fucking psychotic? It's a car. It needs to last. I'm spending a shitload of money on this. It's gonna need to last me for how long? Well, when it comes to shit like computers and shit, like if you go to like, I don't know, I don't think you should don't buy a PC like out the gate at Best Buy or what have you. Let's say you did that. Let's say you're like, hey, I need newest Mac or whatever from the Apple store or whatever, for whatever godforsaken reason. The moment you walk out the door with that laptop, it is already obsolete. By the time you walk out the door, it just is already obsolete. And it's so fucking infuriating.
I want to touch more on your right to repair thing because I have a little pushback and a little thing that I will give you. So Apple does this thing where like, yes, all phone manufacturers do this now where you have to like take a heat gun to the back of your phone if you want to open it up. Now, the reason they do this is because they are increasing the water resistance of your phone. Like the newest iPhones have like a crazy amount of water resistance where you can like I remember it was a Jerry Rig Everything video. They like dropped this Apple Watch like in the bottom of the lake for like a week. They got it, he cleaned it off, and it just worked because of how much water resistance was in there. And that is a thing where like a lot of damages to phones, a lot of commonly is water resistance, right? And so by making it so that your phone cannot get damaged by water increases the lifespan of phones because the most common thing to happen in phones damaging it is water, right? And so it is a good thing that they do that, right? And so that's the only thing I'll give back if you like that, right? Because I get the value there. Yeah, but the problem is, giving back to your point, is that phones have batteries. Batteries get worse. Batteries stop working. Right? Yeah. I recently replaced my battery in my S10 Plus to give it a new life. By the way, life-changing. I don't know why I didn't do this before. I would charge my phone two to three times a day. I'm not kidding you. That's two insane. To 3 times a day, depending on use. Like it spent more time on the charger versus off of the charger, right? And in order to replace my battery, I had to take a heat gun to the back of my phone, break off the adhesive, take it off, and heat gun my battery, which, by the way, guys, if you don't know what you're doing, don't point a heat gun at a battery. It's not a good idea.
Yeah.
But you have to do that because the fucking battery is glued in for whatever reason. I don't know why the battery has to be glued in, but that is like, you know, there is a little bit of give and take there where it's like, it's good that they, because, you know, if your phone gets dropped in water and you can keep using it afterwards, that saves waste, right? Because you don't have to buy a whole another phone, right? But at the same time, it's just like, well, in 3-4 years, you're buying a new phone anyway, simply because you want a battery, right? I was about to buy a phone, not because my phone was bad or anything, but because the battery life was like near unusable, right?
And that goes back to the whole core issue of, it's like, you don't have a choice, like you don't have freedom of spending power, right?
Yeah.
Because your problem is that your phone isn't charging. So you can't solve that solution by fixing the battery or getting a new battery. You fix the problem by buying a new phone, right? And that's what that kind of whole planned obsolescence thing is all about.
Yep.
Is because they bank on the fact that people aren't going to replace their batteries or can't because they don't know how.
Yeah.
And it's just
and
fucking shit.
It's
and,
hard to do, and it's scary to do too,
it's,
because it's also like, if I mess up, like
I broke it. Yeah.
If I mess up my heat gun, you know, and I burn my screen or I do something wrong, I have to buy a phone.
Heat gun, right?
Well,
you need a piece of equipment.
I did just recently buy a heat gun for a completely separate thing, but it's like I wouldn't have had that before.
Who has a heat gun? Like, I don't even have a heat gun. I have a hot glue gun, but I don't have a heat gun.
Yeah, if you solder, you have a heat gun, but
I do want to read.
I guess. Yeah,
go ahead, Cole. Yeah, go ahead, Cole.
Sorry, I was just gonna mention the back of Apple phones being glass, and like
glass is
good luck
glass,
trying
and glass
to fix
bricks.
that. And glass is glass. No, but it's like if you, first of all, you got to find. I don't know if this is still a thing, but like you used to have to find like an Apple verified repair shop to do it for you, and then you had to like go to the back, like they had to fucking laser the back of your phone off to take the glass off, and then put some new shit on.
Yep.
It's like, the fuck. And that costed hundreds of dollars too.
And they intentionally make it that way.
They intentionally make it like a $300-$400 repair, so then you're just like, oh, I should just buy a new phone.
I'll just get a new phone. Yeah.
And also, fun fact about the Apple certified repair shops: if you are a shop that gets Apple certified repair, basically all you are allowed is batteries and screens. That's it.
Oh, wonderful.
That's all you get. There's nothing else. You can't replace like a USB-C port. You can't replace a camera. None of that shit. Those are the only parts they give you access to. And on top of that, in the contract, it says, hey, we are allowed to come by at any time and check your business to make sure you're doing our practices properly so that you don't replace a USB-C port. And they can do this randomly at any time. And also, if you opt out after you get verified, it is in the contract that they are allowed to still watch you for 5 years after your contract termination to make sure you're not doing it still.
That is
holy shit.
That's
so pretty insane.
That's some Henry Ford shit.
So
that's
wow.
Incredibly malicious.
I do want to read to y'all an excerpt from Lisa Brennan-Jobs' memoir, because I think it'll put a nice little bow on things here. Again, remember that this is a woman that was shunned by her father for much of her life, and made to feel inadequate. So this is from the last couple of pages of it. At the memorial service and in the years since, people want me to know how close they were with my father. He liked giving special advice to my son, someone said. They were very close. They had such a tight relationship, another said of her son and my father. He was like a father to me, said a man tearing up. These conversations have a particular quality in which I feel I am supposed to be, more than a participant, a witness. These people do not ask about my father, but talk fervently at me, as if my listening is the missing ingredient, the yeast that gives their stories life. They recite anecdotes like speeches and walk away. Do they want me to feel deferential? He'd been like a father to them too. They're asserting a claim, and I'm supposed to confirm him as the year father, his great greatness.
Ooh.
I could go on, but it's,
yeah.
It's just such a cultural thing. It doesn't even feel like it just extends to Apple. Like, it's like, I don't want to act like Steve Jobs inventing being this flavor of asshole. but like at the same
there
time,
is the next
you see
paragraph
footprint
actually
a
talks
little bit.
about the asshole too, if we want to read that. When people speak and write about my father's meanness, they sometimes assume that meanness is linked to genius. That to have one is to get closer to the other. Yeah. But the way I saw him create was the best part of him. Sensitive, collaborative, fun. The friends he worked with got to see this more than I did. Also a bar. Maybe the meanness protected the part that created, so that acting mean to approximate genius is as foolish as trying to be successful by copying his lisp, or his walk, or the way he turned around and wagged his hands around his back and moaned to pretend he was making out. So
that was not how I expected that
sentence to go
last
at all.
sentence to end.
No.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah,
I think
okay,
just
so that means-
the
never mind.
the
I'm
most
not gonna
final
go
note
there.
here for me is that like there are problems with every single company. Every single company is intrinsically bad. They're trying to take your money, right? Like especially these mega corporations. All of them have stepped on people to get where they need to go, right? It's just a fact. However, it's different when you are stepping on your customers so blatantly and so obviously over and over
And
over
that
again,
has been the
which is
mission
my
since
problem
like
with
40
Apple.
years ago.
Yeah, which is my biggest problem with Apple. And the biggest problem is because the people that they're stepping on don't know any better, right? It's an unfair fight, right? That's my problem.
Yeah, it's like taking advantage of the elderly. Like a
Yeah, you're taking advantage of just people that don't understand tech. They don't get it. And so they're just like, oh, I should pay for this much thing, where it's just
And
like...
it's only going to get worse as the people that are the main consumers of electronics are not the people that grew up with it. Because there's like, you know, the increasing sort of skill gap in technology where it's assumed that these people know how to know the fundamentals of tech. But in a lot of cases with younger generations, they don't
and that was
anymore.
my thing. Is like I thought growing up that people were gonna, as time went on, more people were gonna grow up and have a better grasp of technology and how to use it. But
It's actually the opposite.
Yeah,
it's actually really the opposite, which is really frightening to me.
Yeah.
Like
In
I
part
know
due
I'm
to
ace,
Apple.
but like if I had kids one day and they grew up to be like unable to use stuff like that, that would be a reason for me not.
You would
to
not
have,
feel great
I have a
about
lot of
being a
reasons
parent,
not to have kids, but that would turn me off from being a parent. It's just like to have to constantly coach them how to use their machines and devices.
Yeah,
And
but that's because like
there's
no
a lot
one,
of that going on right now.
no one
It's
like
scary.
teaches you how to use it, and also they streamline everything so that you don't have to learn how to use it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think not
That's
to air
another
out
big part.
Cole here, but Cole was not very good at computers until like literally in 2020. I was like teaching how to copy and
Audio
paste.
listeners, Cole is smiling. Cole is
So,
smiling. Don't worry,
like-
he doesn't feel targeted yet.
It's not something you can't learn either. I guess that's the moral of the story. Right?
Yeah, you just
It's
have
like,
to want to learn it, and it's just like
Most people don't.
Most people don't, right? They're just like, oh, shiny new thing. It does what I like. It's pretty, whatever. And it's just like,
School's job in this
So
country
pretty.
is to scare people from loving to learn, because that's like a kid's favorite thing is to learn, and then school beats that out
Beats
of
that
you. But
out
that
of
could be a
you.
whole nother
Yeah,
fucking.
beats it out of you.
That could be a
hella
whole
hard.
other podcast episode. in
Yeah,
itself,
for
but
sure.
but
All right,
What a
so
bummer.
do you have one last thing, Cosmic?
I do, yeah.
Okay,
So
I
Chris Ann
felt it.
Brennan, the mother of Lisa Brennan-Jobs. This is how Lisa Brennan-Jobs' memoir ends. It's her mother talking to her, and her mother says, "I don't know how else to say it. I can feel him here, and you know what? He's overjoyed to be with you. He wants to be with you so much he's padding around behind you. I mean, he's delighted just watching you butter a piece of toast." To which Lisa's response is, "I didn't believe it, but I liked thinking it anyway."
And you know what I like thinking about podcast listeners? You liking and subscribing
You liking
to the
and
channel.
subscribing the podcast. Yeah.
I didn't think that this whole episode was going to be an entire Steve Jobs hit piece, but I'm down for it.
Yeah. No,
I
I'm cool with
expected
it.
this.
Yeah.
Because,
I
look,
do too.
Well, the
find
thing is,
you
right, is
someone-
that whether or not we want to acknowledge it, this guy did change the face of tech
He
for
did.
the foreseeable future. And the reason that a lot of tech has stagnated recently is because there's no sort of crazy abusive visionary like him anymore, you
Yeah.
know? And
well,
it's like,
also the person
is that
at the
is
top
that a
of the
better
mountain
world?
plays it so
Yeah.
fucking safe all the time because
Yeah,
they're
that's true
Apple.
too. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when
And
the-
it's like Yeah.
You know, they started
Yeah.
out as this biggest innovator, and they started out and they were like, hey guys, we just want to make a good product and we don't care about the money. And then now it's the opposite.
Now they really care about the money.
They really care about the money. They don't necessarily care about innovating.
Yeah.
And that's why they don't have a folding phone. Anyway, guys, that's the end of the episode.
Yeah.
See y'all.
I hope you listen to this with your
Comment down
AirPods and
below
like on your
feedback.
iPhone.
Listen with your AirPods, yeah.
on your
Like this
MacBook.
on your iPhone.
Subscribe to us.
Dude.
Would you rather
Notifications, you'll get
would
them on
you
your
rather
watch.
kill Ricky Gervais or Steve Jobs? Again.
Anyway,
See
goodbye,
ya.
Bye,
everyone.
gamers. Thanks for hanging.